6 of the last 7 Heisman Trophy winners have been selected first overall in the NFL draft, and one of the few outliers is that of Devonta Smith. Despite his stellar play at the University of Alabama and winning the Heisman Trophy, his smaller stature raised concerns amongst NFL scouts, and as many of you see, he has a stellar career so far in the National Football League, as he and Jalen Hurts teamed up to win a Super Bowl and put a halt to the Kansas City Chiefs' chances at winning 3 consecutive Super Bowls. Another notable outlier to this trend would be that of Johnny Manziel. Despite his spectacular play at Texas A&M University, some of his off-the-field controversies raised questions among scouts, and that led to him sliding all the way down to late in the first round, which he was eventually selected by the Cleveland Browns. The only Heisman winner that fell completely out of the first round, we would have to go all the way back to 2007. Despite his dominant play at the quarterback position, winning the Heisman Trophy and leading his team to a national championship appearance, he found himself falling all the way down to the very last pick of the 5th round. This would be none other than the story of Troy Smith. So in today's video, we're going to delve into his stellar career at Ohio State University. Deviating from this trend of Heisman winners being selected in the first round, we would have to go all the way back to 2007. Despite this individual's spectacular play at quarterback and his stellar performance during the 2006 season, he found himself sliding all the way down to the very last pick of the 5th round. So remember, if you like this type of content, please be sure to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you'll never miss an episode of College Football Legends. Troy Smith is a native of Columbus, Ohio, and his mother and 2 siblings moved to Glenville, Ohio, a nearby suburb of Cleveland. Although there's not entirely too much in-depth information about his childhood, we do know that he was placed into foster care for a brief time. This was mostly due to his mother working through some personal issues that affected her ability to take care of her children. Despite some early setbacks, Troy Smith was a multi-sport standout, and local high school coach Ted Ginn Sr. noticed his talents and recruited him to play quarterback at nearby Glenville High School. Despite Troy Smith's modest numbers during his junior year, he was invited to the Elite 11 quarterback camp. This is a camp specifically focused that invites the top incoming seniors at the quarterback position, and this featured recent alumni Bo Nix, Quentin Ewers, and Heisman winners Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels. During this camp, Troy Smith displayed an elite athletic ability, and he stood out as a passer with a high ceiling that could eventually develop into a dominant starter at the college level, if he reaches his full potential. In addition to his athletic ability he displayed in that camp, it opened up the door for potential college teams to recruit him as an athlete at the running back, wide receiver, or kick returner positions. As one of the unheralded, underrated prospects coming into that camp, which featured future first-round draft pick Vince Young, Drew Slanton, and his future teammate Justin Zwick, he left that camp with multiple Division I offers. Smith finished his senior year with a modest 1,000 yards passing and only 12 touchdowns, and despite his below-average numbers as a quarterback coming out of high school, Ohio State saw his potential, and he was recruited as an athlete. This is a designation that recruiters give to players so they can potentially fill multiple positions, including quarterback. During the 2002 campaign, his freshman season, Troy Smith was deep on the quarterback depth chart, and he filled in on occasion at running back and kick returner. But overall, he saw very little playing time. All eyes were on fellow incoming freshman Maurice Clarett, who rushed for over 1,200 yards and helped lead the Buckeyes to a national championship against the Miami Hurricanes in the Fiesta Bowl. To note, this was no easy task for the Buckeyes, due to the fact they managed to topple the defending national champions and one of the most stacked Hurricane rosters of all time, loaded with future NFL talent such as Sean Taylor, Willis McGahee, Andre Johnson, Kellen Winslow, and Jonathan Vilma. The careers of Maurice Clarett and Troy Smith would go in polar directions, as Maurice Clarett would see his career come to an eventual end due to legal issues and personal conduct that would lead to his eventual dismissal from the team after that stellar 2002 season. Conversely, for Troy Smith, despite being an afterthought and seeing very little playing time during his freshman campaign, he would eventually become one of the most dominant and productive offensive players in the history of Ohio State Buckeye football. Moving forward to the 2004 season, head coach Jim Tressel decided to start Justin Zwick as their QB1. Yet halfway through the season, he suffered a season-ending injury, and Troy Smith took over at quarterback. He took his opportunity and led his team to a productive season. Despite taking over halfway, he convinced the coaching staff that he would be the starter for the 2005 season. Unfortunately, there was one minor speed bump. Troy Smith faced a brief suspension for violating NCAA rules for taking improper benefits, which totaled to a whopping $500. How far we've come to the NIL deal controversies of the day, surrounding Nico Emiliaba and his brother from Arkansas and Tennessee respectively, and a slew of average players demanding millions of dollars before even setting foot on campus. Where back in those days, taking even the smallest amount of benefit can result from being kicked off the team, Troy Smith faced a brief suspension for violating NCAA rules for taking improper benefits from local boosters, which totaled for a whopping, wait for it, $500. How far we've come from today's NIL. From back then, you could be suspended for taking even the smallest amount of benefit. Now we have controversies surrounding players such as Nico Emiliaba and his brother, from Arkansas and Tennessee respectively, and a slew of very average players demanding millions of dollars before even setting foot on campus. Troy Smith took over as the full-time starter for the 2005 campaign, and he was solid, passing for 2,200 yards, 16 touchdowns, along with 11 rushing TDs. Although he came to Ohio State as a less polished passer, his dual threat ability, along with wide receiver Santonio Holmes and his former high school teammate Ted Ginn Jr., led his team to a 10-2 season with huge expectations going into his senior year. The 2006 Ohio State Buckeyes, led by Troy Smith, had a season for the ages. They blew out 3 ranked opponents, and they dominated the regular season, including defeating their hated rivals, the Michigan Wolverines. Troy Smith became the very first Ohio State Buckeye in over 50 years to defeat Michigan on 3 consecutive seasons. Their victory over Michigan crowned them the Big Ten champions, and a bid to face the Florida Gators in the BCS National Championship game. Troy Smith passed for over 2,500 yards and 30 touchdowns. His passing numbers were through the roof from his previous season, and his athletic ability shredded defenses in the Big Ten. His leadership and stellar play led to All-American honors and a host of postseason awards, including the Davey O'Brien Award, Walter Camp Award, and the coveted Heisman Trophy, becoming the 6th Buckeye in the school's history to win the award. Going into the 2007 BCS title game, Ohio State had all of the hype with the Heisman winner in Troy Smith, and he was looking to win his 2nd national title of his career. Unfortunately for Troy Smith and the Buckeye Nation, they were about to get the brunt end of the dominance that was the Southeastern Conference. And that dominance had a firm grip on the Bowl Championship Series era of college football, as an SEC team had won 9 of the last 15 title games during that era. Despite Troy Smith and a talented Ohio State roster, the Florida Gators featured Chris Leak, Tim Tebow, Deshaun Wynn, and Percy Harvin, and a Gator defense that crushed the Ohio State offense in a devastating 41-14 loss. And it was Troy Smith's most abysmal performance of his college career, passing for only 35 yards and a costly interception. Despite his stellar career and dominant 2006 regular season, this title game was not only a black mark on his career, but it would foreshadow his future as a quarterback in the pro ranks. In this national title game against an elite SEC defense that was loaded with future NFL talent, Troy Smith's weaknesses as a quarterback was exploited in front of a national audience. He was constantly under pressure, which forced him into mistakes, including that costly interception. His poor accuracy and inability to read Florida's defense yielded one of the lowest passing ratings in the history of the national championship game. Troy Smith managed to put together 2 stellar seasons between his junior and senior year at Ohio State, passing for a career total of 5,700 yards and 54 touchdowns, along with a multitude of postseason accolades, including the Heisman Trophy. Anyone with this resume going into the NFL draft is normally a top 10 pick, and signs a huge rookie contract with opportunities to lead their franchise to the promised land. Prior to that national championship game against Florida, Troy Smith could have literally run for governor for the state of Ohio. NFL scouts were predicting a high draft grade due to his dominant 2006 season, yet other scouts were skeptical of his ability to be productive at the next level. That Fiesta Bowl exposed every one of his weaknesses. In addition, standing only 6 feet tall and running a 4.7 40-yard dash at the NFL Combine, which is considered average, saw his draft stock plummet faster than the stock market crashed of the Great Depression. We have all heard stories of highly touted players that didn't live up to their potential at the next level in the National Football League. We've also heard stories of virtually unknown players coming out of college that took the league by storm. Unfortunately for Troy Smith, this would not be one of those success stories. The 2007 draft produced legends such as Calvin Johnson, Marshawn Lynch, Adrian Peterson, and Hall of Famers Joe Thomas, Patrick Willis, and Darrelle Revis. The 2 quarterbacks taken in the first round were Jamarcus Russell and Brady Quinn. And if you know anything about underachieving draft picks, you definitely know about these 2. Despite their lackluster to abysmal pro careers, Jamarcus Russell and Brady Quinn had something that Troy Smith was lacking. Prototype measurables such as size, arm strength, and speed, all factors that Smith lacked, and scouts were willing to gamble on Brady Quinn and Jamarcus Russell's potential over Troy Smith's resume. Troy Smith's abysmal national championship performance, average physical measurables, and an era of football that focused on pro-style pocket passers over dual-threat quarterbacks, Smith fell to the very last pick of the 5th round to the Baltimore Ravens. He was drafted as a developmental project with low risk, and with his low draft rating, it would be a smart investment by the Ravens if he happened to exceed expectations. During Troy Smith's rookie season, he was expected to learn the offense and develop. However, due to injuries of veteran Steve McNair and the release of Drew Olson, he found himself as the 2nd-string quarterback behind Kyle Bowler. Bowler as a starter was underwhelming at best and eventually became another first-round quarterback that failed to live up to expectations. Smith did see some playing time and showed flashes of potential, Following that 2008 season, he was expected to compete for the starting job against rookie and first-round draft pick Joe Flacco. With Troy Smith's experience as a second-year player and Joe Flacco, although being the first-round pick, he had a legitimate chance to be in the Ravens' starting quarterback. Prior to that 2009 season, in an unfortunate sequence of events, Troy Smith developed a rare illness during preseason training camp that required weeks of recovery and time away from football. This time away forced the coaching staff to select rookie Joe Flacco as their starter. And as many of you know, Joe Flacco was a mainstay for the Ravens for over 10 seasons, leading his offense to a victory over the San Francisco 49ers in Super Bowl 47. And surprisingly, at the making of this video, is currently on an NFL active roster. As it became apparent that Joe Flacco was going to be a permanent starter for the Ravens, they decided to part ways with Troy Smith and they released him into free agency. He eventually signed with the San Francisco 49ers with the potential to compete for their starting job. This proved to be a good move for the San Francisco 49ers and Troy Smith. The Niners had yet to settle on a starting quarterback, and Troy Smith was in dire need of a fresh start. He experienced a sliver of success as he was inserted as the starter for a 6-game stretch and put up some decent numbers. The coaching staff realized his potential. However, they felt that former first-round draft pick Alex Smith would overall be a better fit for the 49er offensive scheme. Choosing not to re-sign Troy Smith after the 2010 season, this would pretty much put an end to his National Football League career, only after 4 seasons. He appeared in 20 games in the Canadian Football League and saw some flashes of his success. But however, as with his time in the NFL, his skill set as a dual-threat quarterback in a pass-heavy league in the Canadian Football League saw his time cut short as well. This proved to be a good move for the 49ers and Troy Smith, as the San Francisco 49ers had yet to settle on a starting quarterback, and Troy Smith was in dire need of a fresh start. He experienced a sliver of success as he was inserted as the starter for a 6-game stretch and put up some decent numbers. The coaching staff realized his potential. However, they felt that former first-round draft pick Alex Smith would overall be a better fit for the 49er offensive scheme. Choosing not to re-sign Smith after the 2010 season would put an end to his career in the National Football League only after 4 seasons. He appeared in 20 games in the CFL, Canadian Football League, and he saw some flashes of success. As with his time in the NFL, his skill set as a dual-threat quarterback in the pass-heavy league of the CFL, he saw his time cut short as well. With the trend of former Heisman winners being selected in the first round of the National Football League draft, many speculate what exactly went wrong for Troy Smith. After doing some research on this very interesting topic, I was able to narrow it down to a few factors that derailed his career in the professional ranks. First, despite his success during that epic 2006 season at Ohio State, which culminated in winning the Heisman Trophy, that national championship loss to Florida exposed his weaknesses as a potential starter in the NFL. No shade to the Ohio State Buckeyes regular season schedule that year, but the Gators was the first legitimate team with real NFL talent, especially on the defensive side of the ball. They manhandled the Ohio State offensive line, and that exposed every one of his weaknesses and his inability to be a deep threat quarterback. Troy Smith's average measurables led to many scouts backing away, and that left him with very few options going into the 2007 NFL Draft. We see dual-threat quarterbacks as a norm in today's game, yet many teams favored the classic pro-style quarterback, and many offensive coordinators were unwilling in that era to alter their offensive scheme to fit Troy Smith's strengths. And the last factor, and a factor that many have no way of knowing and several speculate, but that rare and unexpected illness going into the 2009 season was the missed opportunity that Troy Smith needed to prove to the Baltimore Ravens that he could be a legitimate starter. With Joe Flacco taking over as starting quarterback, he was a mainstay for the Baltimore Ravens and went on to have a long career with multiple Pro Bowl selections. After Troy Smith's retirement from football, he works within his community and he appears on multiple podcasts. In addition, he attends alumni events as he is still a beloved member of the Ohio State Buckeye Nation. That concludes another episode of College Football Legends. What's your opinion of today's topic? Do you think if Troy Smith had fared better in that national championship game, that could have led to a better draft status and maybe more opportunities to be a starter in the National Football League? I want you to leave your thoughts in the comment section below. And of course, please be sure to like and subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell so you'll never miss an episode of College Football Legends. Until next time.